All right, guys, back here on Southeastern 14 with Max Barr. We're making our predictions and picks for Wednesday night's action in SEC basketball. Just as a note, if you're an Auburn or Alabama fan, we did a separate video on that one, so you can find that here on the channel and see which one of us
That link will
picked.
be in the description.
We'll put it in the description, and you can also see which one of us picked which team. Because it was not a clean, it was not a clean sweep.
Was not.
Unlike I was expecting it to be. It was not a clean sweep. So you can find out what we're talking about in that video. Before we get to these picks, let's tell you about our friends at Bet Online. The NFL playoffs, of course, are here. NBA season in full swing as well. Bet Online has you covered with all the up to the second odds, news, and scores. Additional odds, lines, trends, and info. You can find them both on desktop and mobile, so you can access the world's best wagering information anytime you need it. So head over there today, betonline.ag, get on the action, see all the updated odds. Remember, use our promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, to receive your 50% and welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, where the game starts. All right, let's start here with Georgia and LSU, Max. That's going to be a 6:30 p.m. Eastern tip on the SEC Network. We talked about it. This is a sneaky game for both teams here because, and this is going to apply to a couple games on this Wednesday night slate. Georgia and LSU, two teams that I feel like have just been jumbled together in our power rankings week after week after week. And, when people ask who are the, some of the more surprising teams in the SEC, I think you would have to include that trio of teams at 3-2 right now, which are South Carolina, Georgia, and LSU. Of course, South Carolina is going to host Kentucky on Tuesday. And then you got these two teams playing. And again, the winner here can potentially jump up, I think. I mean, they can jump up to fourth, I guess, in the standings, which again, we're a long way to go. But
For these two teams, though.
Yeah, somebody's going to be 4-2 after this game. And I think this is a very interesting setup here when you look at this, because what has been the difference for these two teams turning things around this season? Their defense. They're both playing much better defense. And this sets up as a pretty fun matchup, Max, for two teams that many of us sort of expected to be in the bottom four, bottom five in the SEC. Two very improved teams and trying to keep fighting their way up into that, top four, top five in the league.
Hey, I'll take it. I'll take all the hype we can get around a Georgia LSU game. Obviously, like I normally do, I like to start with looking at it from a betting standpoint and just seeing the spots. Both of them here are bouncing back off a loss. Okay, so you're pretty much you've got the same level of motivation and confidence, except you just have one team that is returning home after a bad road loss, Georgia at Kentucky, and then you have one team that is now having to go on the road after a home loss, LSU losing their rematch against A&M, splitting that matchup. So probably around the same levels of motivation. I don't think there's a significant edge on either side. But when you look at the numbers, I think these teams are very similar. They've both been playing, they've been leaning on their defense, and they both quietly shoot the ball pretty well. You've seen I've been talking about Tyrell Ward lately off the bench. He adds a pop for LSU. Jalen Reed at 6'10" can stretch the floor, similar to how Jabri Abdur-Rahim at the 4 can stretch Georgia's offense out. So you got similar teams facing each other here. One thing I do want to note though, Blake, is, and I was all over him. The introduction of Jalen Cook to this team completely changed how they were playing, but he has slowed down a lot in conference play, a lot. His first 3 games, all right, this is not conference play. This is in mid to late December. I'm going to read you off his assist to turnover ratio for his first 3 games in an LSU uniform, where we started to think like, oh my gosh, he has completely changed this team. 6 assists, 1 turnover, 5-1, 5-2. So his first 3 games that we were just like, oh my gosh, the assist to turnover ratio, which was just crushing this team, is now fixed. Okay. Well, I'll give you his last 4 games here. Well, I'll just give you his 5 games in conference play, starting from A&M and working backwards. 1 assist, 5 turnovers, 1-4, 0-5, 1-3, and then 3-3. He has not had a single game in SEC play with a positive assist to turnover ratio, and that's why we started to like this team so much. So that is an area of concern where I think most people, if they are taking the LSU side, they will note that as one of their reasons. This is a different team with Jalen Cook. Well, it was and now we're kind of falling back into leaning on Jordan Wright for everything. So I think that's just one area where I think a lot of people, if you are taking LSU, they're going to lean into that. And I don't really think that's something you can lean into right now. But with how these teams are both in similar motivation levels and both stacked right up next to each other in the power rankings, I can't see big separation either way here.
Well, here's why this is important for both teams. LSU is at Georgia, then they're at Alabama, home against Arkansas, at Tennessee, home against Alabama. And then they got 2 road games after that at Florida and South Carolina. So it's a pretty brutal upcoming stretch for LSU. If you look at Georgia's schedule, home against LSU here, then they're at Florida, then they get Alabama, South Carolina at home, a couple road games after that, Mississippi State, Arkansas, then a road game with Vanderbilt in there. So really, again, this is pretty big for Georgia because if they win this game, there's a really good chance just based on having home games in there and then winnable road games in a couple of those to make a run here. So you mentioned a lot of different things and kind of how this thing could play out. I'm going to go Georgia. I think, again, if this was in Baton Rouge, I may take a chance on LSU here. Of course, I'm rooting for a big Jordan Wright game just based on the SEC fantasy. But I'm going to go Georgia in this one. They're the home team. And again, Georgia's been a team that looked like you mentioned before. They had a really good chance to beat Tennessee. Then they got Dalton connected. And other than that, though, Georgia has played some really good basketball. I know the Kentucky game happened, but they've already proven they win a nice road game at South Carolina. So I just think Georgia's defense here, like you said, could cause some problems. But this should be a close one just based on where these two teams are at.
Yeah, so if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're listening and not watching, you can see that my screen just went blurry as I took a sip of coffee. One thing that is not blurry is my mind on this game.
Great
And
segue there. That
we're
was
seeing
tremendous.
clear as day here at this slate, and I'm going Georgia as well. And I'm going Georgia because I think that this line, whatever it comes out as, will have not taken into consideration that I believe Silas Demery is playing better than Jalen Cook right now. And so in a game where both teams are going to get some 3-point shots because they both can stretch the floor, but also they both play tough defense and keep you in front, I'm going to lean on the better guards. And I honestly think that with the way Demery is playing right now, I'll give Georgia the edge. So give me the Bulldogs.
All right, on to Florida and Mississippi State. This one,
Woo!
SEC Network, 8:30 Eastern. Yeah, the Gators hosting this one, and can we talk about two teams that I feel like have been pretty jumbled at times, and how important this game is. You know, we talked about Georgia and LSU, the battle of 3 and 2 teams. This is a battle of 2 and 3 teams, which means somebody's going to 2 and 4. And I think we've again brought up kind of the upcoming schedules for these two teams. Mississippi State here on the road at Florida. They get Auburn at home, at Ole Miss, at Alabama. Then they get a manageable stretch in there after that. Meanwhile, for Florida, back-to-back home games this week against Mississippi State and Georgia. Then they got to go on the road to play Kentucky and A&M, back to host Auburn. So interesting 5-game stretches here. And like we said, it's just a matter of you can't really afford to drop to 2 and 4. Neither team feels that way right now based on kind of where they are. It's a curious one to me because I'm going to keep saying the same thing. And it's like we want to see Florida win a big game. I think this would somewhat qualify as a big game just based on Mississippi State and where they are right now.
Yeah.
I think, like I said, we had Mississippi State where we have them 6th in the rankings this week, something like that. Power rankings, maybe. Or was it 7th? I don't remember. Somewhere in there.
6th.
6th. Okay. And we had Florida at 8, I think, which some people thought was way too high. But we'll see. I mean, we'll see how this game plays out here.
This will tell.
Another game that feels like it's going to be a close game. You got a Florida team that strength is offense. Mississippi State strength is defense. Interesting matchup here too, Max.
Yeah, very interesting. And I think this one, like we were saying before we started recording, like, whoa, this has a lot of importance on it. Yeah. Like a lot. These teams are playing for a ton in this game. Like I always do, looking at the spots coming off first, both teams similar to Georgia LSU, both teams in the same spot. Both lost against tough teams early on in the week last week. Florida losing to Tennessee, Mississippi State losing to Kentucky, and then both bounced back with a win on their Saturday games. So same motivation, same confidence for both teams here. No significant edge there. Diving into the game a little bit, this is another Florida home game here, and they have only lost once at home this year, and that was a 2-point loss to Kentucky, who is a top 10 team in the nation. So you can't really knock them that much for that. But yes, they have not. We keep talking about Golden's record against top 50, top 100 teams. Mississippi State's a top 50 team, so you have that playing in Mississippi State's favor. But also, Mississippi State has yet to win a true road game this year. They're 0-3. They lost at Georgia Tech, they lost at South Carolina, and then they just got clobbered at Kentucky. So you have a Florida team that has been just cannot win a big game, and you have a Mississippi State team that can't win on the road. So stalemate.
Somebody's got to win.
What the heck? Diving a little bit deeper, though, obviously we've been talking about the Mississippi State free throws. If this is a really close game, Florida's not a great free throw shooting team, but in conference play, they're shooting it better than Mississippi State is. And so, advantage Mississippi State there. But then also, if you look at, how the defense and offenses match up, Florida's defense ranks first in 3-point rate. Like, they do not let teams shoot threes. They run you off the 3-point line. Well, Mississippi State doesn't shoot threes. They want everything inside. So as this is probably as a stalemate as you can get. I'm going to go with Florida here because I want to be on the right side of history when Golden gets this top 50 win. I want to be on the right side, but man, I think this is about as stalemate as you can get when you're looking at this game.
It's been hard to trust Mississippi State on the road. I'm going to go with that same theme here. I'm also going to pick Florida. Like I said, I'm a little nervous about it because
oh yeah, I'm nervous.
I just want to see them put it together and win one of these kind of games. And to this point, we've not seen that over the past couple of years, like I said, outside that Tennessee game last year. And so, yeah, gives me a little hesitation, but I think that the Gators, something they can do. We've talked about kind of the teams that can rebound well and all that, like an A&M, Florida offensive rebounding, one of the best teams in the country at that. Mississippi State, we know the size that they have with Tolu Smith and all that, but I tend to it's the home away split. Like, this is how it works in the SEC, and I think this is why we're all starting to lean into this to some degree. Like, we're like, hey, when in doubt, pick the home team because that's just the way it works in the SEC right now. And so it's what I'm going to do here. I think this should be another really good game. I think this Wednesday night slate is pretty loaded when you think about it. Because again, Georgia LSU, sneaky good game. Florida Mississippi State, sneaky good game. Auburn Alabama, obviously, the headliner. And then there's this one. Sorry, it was not the best setup for Arkansas fans, but this one feels a little different than the other three because it's Arkansas at Ole Miss, 9 p.m. Eastern, ESPNU. I don't have a lot to say about this game, and quite frankly, we all know why. Like, this is kind of a matter of where Arkansas is right now. If you have trust issues with Arkansas at home, how are you going to trust them on the road where they have lost by 10 at Georgia, 22 at Florida? They just got beat at home by 13 to South Carolina. I'm kind of, giving away the pick here, but I mean, I'm picking Ole Miss, but I'm just curious, Max, as you look at this game, is there any reason to lean in on Arkansas here against this Ole Miss team who I know has also not played great recently, but guess what? Home road splits. Ole Miss is bad on the road, but they're really good at home. And so, I mean, I feel like this is just kind of a repeat, but it's not because these two teams are in different spots than Florida and Mississippi State to a certain degree. But I guess try to find me a path for Arkansas here based on what we've seen over the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, so tough game to break down. And when you're looking at the conference numbers, you can see some things here. How does Arkansas score? Free throws. All right, we've seen that. That is literally there. It's either Tremont Mark goes for 35 and he hits every mid-range shot he takes, and you get a 3 or 2 from Davenport and maybe Menefield or something like that. But it's free throws. And this is an Ole Miss defense that doesn't really foul that much. So they're not going to put in it, and this is not going to get a Bud Walton whistle either. So I think that's going in Ole Miss's favor. But then also the big thing that we've talked about with Ole Miss every time we break them down is how bad of a rebounding team they are. I think right now, if I'm not mistaken, on KenPom, they are the worst Power 6 rebounding team in the nation. I'm pretty sure. It's and the second worst is Missouri. So SEC is doing great there.
Mm.
But this is not an Arkansas team that's going to take advantage of that. They're dead last in the SEC in offensive rebounding, and they're 11th in defensive rebounding. So it's not an area that Arkansas is going to really take advantage of like other SEC teams would. With how good Ole Miss has been at home, I think this is pretty straightforward for me, which worries me a little bit. Every time I think something straightforward, I get it wrong. But I'm going Ole Miss here at home. I can't find a way to see Arkansas coming out of this one with a win.
Well, the problem is you just don't know what you're going to get from Arkansas. I mean, we learned that in the South Carolina game. We're like, okay, maybe. Well, that's the thing. It doesn't, right? Like he said it. He's like, wasn't that part of the quote or something? It's like, you guys asked me, like, why wouldn't I play a bunch of different, like, at this point? Like, I don't know who to tell you. Like, so, yeah. I mean, we thought that the turnaround could happen after the Texas A&M game. We thought there was a slight chance, perhaps. That was all they needed. You know, we've seen that happen before for teams. They get a, buzzer-beating win.
Yep.
Take off from there. Came out, didn't look like they were into it against South Carolina. So why should we expect, if we're making picks on a game and who we trust more, I'm going to take the team that has been really good at home this year versus the team that has been so inconsistent now, anywhere, home or away. And it's pretty straightforward. Like, that's the thing. Is like, sure, like you mentioned, could Tremont Mark have a big game here in Arkansas win? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I don't think Ole Miss is as bad overall as it is on the road. And so getting to come back home, that's a nice thing to do. And so, yeah, give me the Rebels here. I'm with you. So we'll see. But this is an interesting one.
Spreads, though, Blake. Got here.
I was going to say, I think this one's interesting in a different way than the other three.
Yeah.
Because it, like it or not, Arkansas has just become a team that you have to watch just because you're curious, like just curiosity wise. What are they going to do? How are they going to look? All those things. But yeah, like this entire slate on Wednesday is really fascinating because, we said, really important games for a lot of teams here. And as mentioned earlier, if you want to check out our thoughts on that Alabama-Auburn game, you can do that here on the channel as well. So we appreciate you guys watching. Again, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button as well. Remember, we also have a podcast. We put a lot of our stuff here that we do on YouTube on our podcast feeds. You can go find that. Any podcast app you use, just search for Southeastern 14 there. And remember, use that promo code from BetOnline, Believe, BLEAV.
And follow us on Twitter.
Yeah, follow us on Twitter
at
14 Southeastern. If you want to tell us how right or wrong we are about our picks, you can do it by going
You're normally going to be telling us how wrong we are.
Well, that's usual. Yeah, we're going to get updated standings here soon. And let me just tell you, it's not going to be pretty for any of us. But that's okay. That's what we do. We make wrong picks. Anyways, we appreciate you guys watching as always, and a lot more SEC basketball, football, baseball stuff on the way here at Southeastern 14. So, again, thanks for watching. We'll talk to you again here soon at Southeastern 14, presented by Bet Online.